This empty chair represents the addict who died today, not knowing recovery was possible.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Empty Chair. It's my turn this week. Cole will be back on the next episode. Listen, before I introduce my guests, I guess it's time for me to get on my soapbox. I'm sure most of you are aware of a really good friend of mine and a really great advocate, Doug Griffin. He lost his daughter, Courtney, about 8 years ago now. And, he has been the face of something like the empty chair for a long time. He's been to Washington, D.C., I don't even know how many times. He spoke with the highest politicians in this administration and the last administration. And just this past couple of weeks ago, I guess, when they had the State of the Union address, him and his wife Pam were invited to the State of the Union address. And, it's no matter how you feel about whatever the president is, it's quite an honor. And obviously, Doug went there, and the president mentioned him and a little bit of his story. And, I think it's great that they give him that recognition, or I should say, Courtney. This is what bothers me. Doug has been doing this continuously, and he's a lot more patient than I am, because right now I'm getting a little pissed off of these freaking politicians from the high to the low, Republican to the Democrats, right, left. And basically, what they do is they use his story to make a point, so to speak. Keith mentioned it, political capital. And you know what? I know Doug, he wouldn't give a damn if they were doing it just for political capital, if they actually acted on something. Now, for years and years and years, he's been going, and he will never give up. No matter who calls him in the Washington or the state houses or whatever, he will be there with the hope that maybe one of these times, somebody will actually listen to him. Trouble is, they talk about his story, but nobody listens to him. Nobody listens to anyone who has been directly involved for this for so many years. And until that time comes, I'm not going to be too happy with the right, the left, or anything in between, because in a 12-month period, we lost 109,000 young adults. And I think Biden's answer, like Trump before him, was we got to stop the fentanyl from coming in. Well, that's a nice gesture, but anybody who thinks they're going to cure addiction by stopping fentanyl from coming in, I got a little story that we had addiction before fentanyl. So, it's something that has to be attacked from, a lot of different angles. And the truth be told, it comes down to a business. That's all it is. It's a business of supply and demand. So I understand them wanting to cut the supply, but what if instead we were to increase greatly the education and the prevention and maybe cut down the demand? So, any of you politicians that actually want to do something, reach out to just about anybody who's done this show and ask them some questions. They might surprise you. And that's all I'm going to say about that for tonight. Okay, my guest now is, I guess I can call you a young man. You're still younger than me.
Oh,
Is a young man. This is Keith Keller, and he is also an author. He's in long term recovery. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the dark days and what led him into recovery and some of the great things he's done over the years since he's been in recovery. So, Keith, welcome to the empty chair.
thank you, Phil. Thank you. Very, very nice to be here. And how long have you been doing this?
Oh, me and my daughter started doing the empty chair on local TV, about 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Yeah, been doing it a long time. And then we moved here about 5 or 6 years now, Lou. And we came here because we could do the live show. So, and we get some sponsors. Don't forget to read the sponsors. They're the ones that, donate, help us to get scholarship money. So, give them a little love. Go ahead, Keith.
Well, thank you for inviting me today. My name is Keith Keller, and I am a registered nurse. I'm in long-term recovery for over 3 decades, and I am the author of a couple of books on recovery. And I bring to that my personal recovery, my experience of 27 years as a registered nurse, and close to, certainly over 30 something in working in the mainstream of Western healthcare, studies in alternative and complementary and energy medicines. And for the last decade, pretty significant studies of science-based personal transformation techniques, meditation, and some very cutting-edge approaches to change. So I am in recovery. I identify as, the language. Let's talk about that real quick. The language is constantly evolving, and having worked in the clinical area for the last few years, I've sort of been slightly reconditioned and modify my way of pronouncing things. So if I went to a 12-step meeting, I would say, "Hi, I'm Keith. I'm an alcoholic," because they like to keep it simple.
Yes,
I heard.
they do.
Yes. And but I identify as being in recovery from alcohol use disorder and polysubstance use disorder, because for me it was really about getting away from reality.
How old were you when you started to experiment?
When I lapsed into unhealthy
See, when I was doing it, I used to
abusive alcohol.
I would say, this is when I started to have fun.
Yeah.
So when did you start to have fun?
Oh, I don't know if there was a lot of fun for me. I think I was very preoccupied from an early age, hounding dad for a sip of his beer when I was real small.
Sure.
And some experiences with certain commercially available really soda pop with alcohol in it, and ruining my friend's tent at a young age with being sick. And but it went from there. But what I really can trace back to, if there was a moment when my alcohol use disorder and all the subsequent things were born, it was on a day when I think it was about 13. I was out with some older friends and caught the perfect buzz. All of a sudden, we're walking down the street, quiet road, and out comes a bottle of rum that one of the other guys had. He, a little older, I guess his dad wasn't going to miss it. And I caught that perfect buzz. And it's like I spent the next couple of decades trying to reproduce that. And, what I've learned subsequently is that's kind of normal. When your brain kind of develops a certain way, you enhance it. Oh, sorry, I'm bumping the microphone. You enhance the neural network predisposition to want to have that. And of course, over time, tolerance develops. It takes
Sure.
more and more of your substance of choice to achieve the desired effect
Yep.
until it finally stops working at all. In that time frame, control is lost, and then comes, dependence. So
Right.
by the time I was 20-ish, I really had trouble going a day without a drink. So I could define my view of the world through the lens of the open bottle of vodka that was under the seat of my car.
Sure.
And that's kind of shameful to me, but I've become completely transparent. And of course it's not who or what I am anymore, but I say that because we need to give everybody permission to accept, that was then that we have a chronic condition that is treatable, and we need to move forward from there and kind of thumb our noses at the stigma.
Yeah, and that's a tough lesson to learn. It's a tough lesson for our loved ones, but it's tough for us too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Fran had to teach me my lesson. Oh shit, she's listening too. God damn it. Yeah, it's I mean, I drank for a lot of years. I used to think of myself as very functional, and I guess I was. But come COVID time, and I wasn't doing nothing, all of a sudden, I was like a kid in a candy store.
Mm.
And because of my lovely wife, she kind of reeled me in a very nice way, instead of screaming at me, in a very nice way, she kind of set me straight. So at the ripe young age of about 71, I decided to stop drinking.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
No, I know you mentioned that to me
Yeah,
about a year ago.
So I mean, I really can't relate, because you started. How old were you when you figured you had a problem?
Interestingly, I had the occasional moment of clarity when I certainly knew my drinking was not normal, but it was my life. It was what I knew. It was my best friend. It was that comfortable sweater that I would have felt just wrong without. And of course, the discomfort that follows when you stop the substance. Alcohol withdrawal is potentially fatal.
It is.
And this is something
just about the only one it is.
This is our public service announcement moment. Well, I think there might be a few more,
There'll probably be a couple.
But
anyway.
that's and the second time I detoxed, I stayed home.
Yeah.
And toughed it out on the couch, and didn't quite know better. Had failed to sort of take into account those little pills they gave me at the first medically supervised detox. Probably took the edge off, and but basically it was shame, because it was my second time I'd failed, and of course this was decades ago.
Right.
So there was much less awareness, much more stigma, and I was basically on my own. But okay, so a couple of things defined my drinking, and one was I fell in love with music. Around the same time I fell in love with alcohol and getting high all the time. And I blame it on Ringo, because he was just having so much fun back there. And so I started studying and taking drum lessons, and started playing. My goal was to play in bands in high school, which I of course realized. And so like even my freshman year, I could be found out playing in a bar with much older musicians, getting paid in drinks on a school night. And I thought I'd arrived, and that this was,
Well, I mean, let's be honest. At that age, that's like giving kids a dream.
Yeah.
Really, it is, Keith.
Yeah. Playing in a dumpy bar.
Absolutely, At that age.
Well, so I was pretty serious about the music, and I went off to one of the major music schools in Boston after high school, and went from being kind of a big fish in a small pond to a nothing in the ocean. And it's very, very average and mediocre, and ran out of money, and went on the road, and and those, in those little Sheratons where they have like two sinks. The second one was, of course, for ice and beer. And so to sum up about music, I drank myself out of a lot of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And through my 20s, now another thing that happened is I got somehow interested in, and I don't take a lot of credit for insight or wisdom, but I got interested in the medical field. And I had this friend that I would keep every time I'd see her at a party with a beer in hand. I'd say, "Tell me about that job you do." And at the time, she was a surgical technician. Now she is like the head nurse at I think it's Brigham and Women's.
Nice.
Well, now it's Mass General Brigham. Anyway, they keep getting their names longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's done that. And so I went off to school to learn that and did that through my 20s. So I had this semi-respectable job during the day in operating rooms, kind of serious.
All right. So basically, if you're going through this, you're more or less controlling your drinking so you can still do that job?
Some measure of functionality. Yeah. I look back on that, and I went through that program made by the skin of my teeth, Dean's List, in a blackout.
Yeah,
Phil. And somehow, it made me realize how we go through life. It's like we have one hand tied behind our back, and we somehow, navigate until it just becomes, too much. And so, through my 20s, narrowly, but somehow avoided the ultimate catastrophe, frequently drove intoxicated.
Yeah.
And in the 80s, that was becoming, there was a lot of awareness starting to, come about, and miraculously, never had that catastrophe. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, I agree. I can, I know exactly.
It's like the universe is looking out for us, I think.
Yeah,
in some ways, but not always.
Yeah,
it's nothing to count on.
I thank God I never killed anyone or hurt anyone.
Same here.
Yeah.
And maybe there is a little of that gratitude in my way of life today, which is pretty much dedicated to helping others. But all right, so when I was about 30, my mother passed away. She was 6 years younger than I am now, and had been a very heavy drinker. Never seemed to be able to, attempts to change had never worked out for her, and she died of was like the cancer was racing the liver disease for her, so that was kind of a hit for me. And the thing with the bands was not going well because I was drunk, and it was affecting my personality and my performance. And so by the fall of my 31st year, I was just running on empty, and my life felt like it was circling the drain. My relationships were empty shells. Music was dead in the water. And I just felt, I wasn't quite ready to admit defeat, as they say in the 12-step meetings, but I certainly had to get some help. So I checked into Hampstead.
Okay.
And they sat me down and asked about 80 questions pertaining to what was going on with that. And I knew they weren't going to be serving cocktails there for sure. So
you got that, huh?
Yeah. And so I drew, the first couple of weeks of consecutive sober days, and got out of there with sort of a vague intention of, I feel pretty good, certainly. But I also I wasn't ready. There's no substitute for readiness. So I quickly relapsed and had another 4 months of what I term an orientation period, because I had been introduced to meetings. And of course, 30 years ago, Alcoholics Anonymous was pretty much the only show in town.
It was.
There were not a lot of other you could find different meetings. Here's the young people's meeting. Sure. Here's the step. Here's the speaker meeting. But yeah. So I kind of what we call bouncing. I drink one day, be sober the next. I'd go to a meeting, drink the next day, drink on the way home.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd show up there drunk, and I know people were praying for me. So shorten this up, I finally got it. I was out of work with an injury after it seemed like the jig was up in some ways. So I actually went back to work kind of hungover, and was kind of spotted by my manager, who was very concerned, appropriately. After all, it was an operating room, and you can't have so I changed my clothes and snuck out the back door and went home and contemplated ending my life, because I didn't really, the self-loathing and the weight of my bad decisions, it was crushing me. And
and just so people don't think that this is like a rare occasion, most addicts and alcoholics probably contemplate taking their life at one time or another. I know my daughter tried to kill herself, and just about everyone I've talked to, they'd come to a point where it was easier to off themselves than it was to, get clean.
It is a major concern.
Yeah.
And it certainly was for me on that day. I made a phone call, and that was my turning point.
Great.
So I wrote it out on the couch, as I mentioned earlier, which I do not recommend. And of course, now having worked in
Sure.
Clinical nursing, inpatient detox, rehab, outpatient, numerous formats, I would counsel anyone in that situation to seek medical supervision and assistance if you're going to detox. Also, for a better outcome, opioid as well, medically supervised. You do not need to suffer, and let's clear up a misconception. No, you will not be plied with sedating drugs. And no, the idea is to move past that. However, safety and reasonable comfort are certainly the goals of that. And then the whole mental, cognitive, that piece, you have to learn, you have to unlearn a lot of things. And so I started, I jumped in with both feet, as they say, and went to the meetings and took all the suggestions, and 30 days, 90 days, and on, and got a sponsor, got active, and did the things that I needed to do to recover.
Now, see, I never considered suicide. Fran said she'd kill me if I didn't stop drinking. I guess, I don't know if you call that suicide. I'm only kidding, Fran. No, I was not that type. I don't know what the hell I was. Never realized I was an alcoholic until somebody really kind of convinced me.
Well, Phil, you obviously went through a lot of your life getting by, doing, having a productive and contented life.
Very much so, yeah.
And it's we can dive as deep as we need to on that. It comes in so many different shades and forms and subtle, but for me, I started at an early age, and it altered the trajectory of my life. And this is what I say to many people in recovery. You can be the version of yourself you were always meant to be. You can realize your full potential. And it's an opportunity to reinvent yourself and be who and what you decide to be. The only caveat to that is you got to do the work that it takes to become who and what you want to be.
Yeah, it's not just about being clean.
Oh, no.
No, I mean...
well, let's not, there's many different...
Yeah, well, I mean,
approaches.
To me, any fool can get clean. I'm proof of that. But if you don't have a whole attitude change on the whole thing, to me, it's you're like, what do they call it? Like a dry alcoholic or whatever the hell they call that.
There's many variations of that as well. But do I want to be fulfilled? Do I want to be productive? Do I want to meet my potential? And these are the kinds of questions I asked myself. And this is why the way the 12-step traditional model works is you're constantly being influenced by people who, oh, look at him, he bought a house.
Yeah.
Oh, look at him, he went back to school.
Yeah.
Oh, look at him, he goes to the gym. And all these options that I might never have realized were,
I agree,
my possibilities. Yeah. So in the first 5 years, Phil, about a year in, went back to school, working toward my nursing degree. I quit smoking about a year after so now I was completely, caffeine. A lot of my friends say coffee is caffeine. Yeah. If Jim sees this, and bought a house. And so 5 years in, graduated nursing school, new house, new body, started working out and getting fit, and had reinvented myself. And after, the 80, 90, 100-hour weeks of working full time, going to school almost full time, clinical, enough meetings to maintain that recovery, which was making all that possible, and little gym, little housekeeping. It was quite the whirlwind. And when I stopped doing that, graduated school, decided, all right, well, they're not hiring me as a nurse, and I got to pass the boards. So I could have gone on vacation, but I decided, okay, I'm going to pay the bills, study for the boards, and something will work out. And it did. I passed the boards, and I got, my foot in the very stubborn door. That was the last bad nursing market. Yeah. 30. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have that problem now.
Oh, it's sign-on bonus time now. But in those days, it was tough. If you didn't have experience, they didn't want you. But how was I going to get,
exactly
that catch-22? So I had time to kind of revisit, the meetings, and got, changed things up, and I could look around, and I saw, hey, wait a minute. You mean everybody doesn't go back to school, quit smoking, start working out, reinvent themselves? And no, it's a struggle for so many. And I started thinking about this, and I would not stop thinking about this. Okay, so that was a constant theme from even in early recovery. I used to ask a lot of questions, kind of drive them crazy, and they didn't always have the answers. That was, part of it. So, I stopped asking for permission to think outside the box, and, just kept going. I made inroads in the nursing field, and I've worked in a lot of different areas. My decision leaving nursing school was I wanted to work in the, substance use disorder rehab field, and it didn't exist quite the way it does today. The version of that was accessible was, over at Baldpate, or Holy Family on the 3rd and 4th floor, where I did work, and I worked at Baldpate early and later in my career. However, it was the asking of the questions. While I was gaining all this, experience, I went back to the operating room, but then sort of realized, there's a lot of different things I could do. So I worked with children with disabilities and their families, did hospice, did things. That's a
tough one.
Yes, it is, but it wasn't, it's not without benefit. When it makes you a wiser human being, as did working with the children.
Fran's mom ended up in hospice. Fran cannot say enough positive things about the people in hospice.
It is a super noble profession, and thank you to everybody who has made that their dedicated focus.
We're going to take a couple of minutes, and when we come back, we'll kind of go to where you are now and what's going on. So stick around, be right back. Don't forget, we're live. Give us a call. Bye-bye.
Look at all the nice comments.
Haven of Hope is a faith-based 12-step recovery home for women seeking a loving and structured lifestyle to help them persevere over addiction. Our sober living house offers women an opportunity to gain life skills, coping mechanisms, and personal growth so they may return to their home or working field as productive members of society. Haven of Hope's approach is based on fostering a structured, faith-based life with a core component being the 12 steps from the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, for with God, all things are possible. Contact Haven of Hope at havenofhopemethuen.org or call 978-258-3982. That's 978-258-3982, or visit us at 82 Union Street in Methuen.
Hi there. My name's Phil Lahey, and I do the Empty Chair show here. And as much as Fran and I have enjoyed doing this show, our real passion is with where it all began, the Circle of Hope, my support group for the families of addicts. I learned a long time ago that dealing with an active addict is just too difficult. So we invite you to join our group, the Circle of Hope. Give me a call, 978-886-2949, and you'll see our banner on the show anyway. And give me a call, find out what it's all about. You know, if you don't think you're ready to sit into a group, Fran and I always invite people over to the house, and we sit down, have a one-on-one, and we talk about a plan you'll have to set up, how to deal with someone in active addiction, or just give you a chance to vent. So, I mean, if you or someone you know has dealing with someone in active addiction, reach out, give a call, take the first step. I promise you that it won't make it easier, but once you understand what it's all about, you'll be able to deal with it a little bit better. So again, 978-886-2949. Just ask for Phil. I'm always available 24/7. Thanks, and we'll see you on the Empty Chair. Bye-bye. Okay, we're back. And don't forget, it's a live show. You can give us a call, ask Keith a question, yell at me about my political views, anything like that. I can take it. I'm old and I'm tough. So we talked to Keith about his early days and his struggles and his accomplishments to become a registered nurse. And something I've always admired about all people in recovery is the gratitude that they have. You know, when you've been in such a lousy place, being able to go out and buy yourself a meal feels pretty good. So obviously every accomplishment that you make, I mean, you feel pretty grateful about it, don't you?
Yeah, let me back up and say you are always there, like the taped thing just said, and you deserve huge props and kudos, and the gratitude from people like me for people like you.
Well, okay? I appreciate that. Thank you.
I don't think we say it enough, so you need to.
Yeah, friend, you hear that?
Yeah.
You can say it to me.
Right.
She loves me.
This is not my usual thing when I very short on how it was, and I think this is one of the challenges for some people in AA and traditional model and 12-step, because the habit of going on a little too long about how it was. Now, somebody who's newly recovered identifies with that, but are we reinforcing that? We want to know what happened and how it is today and how people, maintain recovery. So I'm about 2 minutes on all that before stuff. Normally.
And I'll be honest with you, I agree. I understand whenever I have someone in here, we do have to tell them a little bit about it. But I always get a boot out of the happy ending part, the recovery.
I know.
The accomplishments that they make over the years and so forth. And you want to know, to me, most of the people that I meet that are in real recovery, they're the kind of people that other people would like to be like.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's go on to what you're doing now.
Okay. I got interested in a lot of things beyond medicine and beyond traditional recovery. And in 2013, I started writing my first book, which was, I sort of always thought I I got a book in me somewhere, and I figured out how to, organize it and follow a format, and I made up the rest as I went along, pretty much, and it worked out. I actually quit a job to just write full time. Again, sort of thinking, okay, it'll work out somehow, and of course it does.
Yeah.
And made every mistake you could make in terms of publishing and figuring that, oh, okay, great, now everybody will just buy it on Amazon. No, you need to market, and there's all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But of course, these things sort of fell together for me just as they were, supposed to. And I come by all this very genuinely. I'm a real guy with a real story, and some people seem to think I can, occasionally turn a clever phrase. So I decided to write a second book in 2017 and start to incorporate more of these non-traditional ideas about recovery, which incorporate, as Mary, and I still can't pronounce her last name, the behavioral health clinician who came and lectured at the last quarterly meeting. I'm sorry, Mary, if you see this,
you know who you are.
Yeah, and no, actually, we're meeting up tomorrow to
are you really?
chat about some stuff. Yeah, and
yeah, she was pretty special.
Yeah. No, but this is very much, I believe, now coming into its own, a more science-based approach, which is not strictly. We're not talking about medicine. We're going to talk a little bit. I've got a box here next to medications for addiction treatment, but the neuroscience. Okay, what are we doing to our brains after years of conditioning ourselves to be living an addicted lifestyle? I am memorizing and rehearsing daily the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of addiction. And so it would make sense when I detox that out of my body and there's nothing left, that no, my work is not done, because those neural networks for the behaviors and the feelings of addicted behavior are still going to be there. And unless, life is not always going to be giving me a break. Sometimes recovery is easy, sometimes recovery is hard. And, until I'm sort of have reconditioned myself to move beyond that, that's why I need meetings. That's why a community of people. That's why I need a sponsor. That's why I need to constantly be learning about recovery.
Yes.
A belief system. Well, there's a little frosting on the cake. It doesn't need to be that religious-based higher power. It invites me to have my own conception of that, certainly, and that's what I would encourage anybody who's questioning that to do. I always say, you know what? My heart will beat 3 trillion times in my lifetime and pump gallons of blood through miles of vessels. If you took my DNA and straightened it out, it would go to the moon and back. And every second, thousands of chemical reactions are taking place in my body, perfectly orchestrate my breathing, digestion, thought process, keep my mouth moving. I'm not doing that. Something is.
Yeah.
That's how I look at that. So there's that. And then here's the thing that you might have been alluding to before: service. Okay, if we're focused on helping others, like I regard the biggest problem in my life being that we still collectively struggle. Okay, I could take that gift and go on my way, the gift of recovery, but I really can't, because we're all in this together. We're connected. So.
Well, yeah, I agree. I know, I've had the opportunity to work with quite a few people, parents more than anything, and they're all very appreciative. But you're right. I think I get more out of it than them, to be absolutely honest.
It is a win-win-win proposition. I win because there's just it releases chemicals in my body that actually make me feel good, support my immunity and mind-body connection for well-being. It's pretty well documented. So I started taking a deep dive on this kind of neuroscience kind of stuff. Also started meditating daily, not 13 minutes, no, an hour a day. for the first couple of years, and you know, started doing this work, and there's a kind of a way this works. When you think a thought, it sends a electrochemical message to part of your body, which then releases a chemical and generates a feeling, and the feeling reinforces the thought. And now I've got a cycle going. Okay, and this, I can either do well with this or I can suffer with this, because this is exactly how anxiety works.
Mm-hmm.
This is how depression works. But I can also take that same neural network machinery and make a decision and condition myself to use that for my highest benefit. And it is possible this way to transform in some remarkable ways, with a focused intention. So this is what I've written about in my second book. It kind of moves on to that, but it's also a nuts and bolts how-to guide for people who need to decide if they have a problem with a substance use or an addiction, which I define as a behavior first and foremost, which takes into account the digital addiction and gambling and
Oh, absolutely.
these sort of things, which is sort of, you know, working the brain in the same way. So it is a behavior that might serve a purpose in the short term, kills pain, or makes me forget about problems in life, or distracts me, or you know, in the case of workaholics, you know, society does not frown on every form of obsessive behavior, but generally will become a problem in the long term. Control is lost, and there you are. You've got an addiction.
Let me pick your brain on this. You know, you're well versed on addiction and recovery and, you know, the behavior and so forth. My biggest roadblock, that I've been doing this for over 20 years, and the thing that is the most frustrating to me, is trying to reach people who haven't been affected. They're hard to get to. I don't, you know, I have tried and tried and tried through schools and organizations. You know, you get a little bit, but boy, I got to tell you, even with all the talk about out there now, all the knowledge that's out there now, it's hard to get people to think that their child could become an addict. And I hate it.
Okay. I can certainly agree that our society and culture as a whole are not quite up to speed with how much this is affecting us. Okay, the 109,000 opioid use disorder overdoses, the number was almost the same, of course, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, for alcohol related. Yep. So it's twice as big. You know, and I look at, okay, the addiction crisis has many moving parts, but stigma is certainly one of our biggest problems as a society. And you know, to be jarred out of our resting state, out of our complacency, do we have to be directly affected? Sometimes I think that's just human nature. But if anybody stops to think, okay, nowadays we all know somebody who has been, you know, or at least somebody who knows some. The degrees of separation are decreasing daily. So you took me by surprise, where I thought you were going to go somewhere else with that. And I think what we really have to do, people in recovery like me, concerned people who have been, you know, 1 degree of separation and have taken up the cause. Phil, you are, you know, you're the perfect example, and people like Doug, and so many more who I've seen and been so moved and beyond words, to, you know, by the groundswell that is starting here. Okay, we need to continue to model the behaviors, because a society that doesn't understand addiction or know about recovery will fear addiction and does not know how to respond or think about the substance use disorder population. And nowadays, all right, so here I'm going to just sort of barge into a related topic. Okay, nowadays, sitting next to the town priest and little old lady who's been going to the primary care doctor for 35 years, now in the waiting room is somebody with in treatment for substance use disorder in that same waiting room. Okay. And I used to be the one they were in that waiting room to see for the last couple of years. I've been working in the field of medication assisted or medications for addiction treatment. Again, the wording is, got to stay up with that. Got to watch the stigma alerts. But okay, so now this is creating, a situation that, it's now very visible. And part of my intake process with people was a little talk about, okay, so we are here because of a chronic condition, treatable, that is, it's a medical problem. It's a legit medical problem. Insurance is paying for this. You are under the care of a doctor for this. However, part and parcel of that is sometimes difficulty handling situations. Sometimes the socialization has been lacking, or discomfort causes anxiety, and unfortunately, it is part of this medical condition. The very things that sometimes give caregivers pause. Oh, I don't want to take care of somebody who's yelling at me, and in that. So part of my talk was, okay, we're in that waiting room, and we have to conduct ourselves. We have to send the memo to people that this is a medical condition. It's a chronic condition, like their high blood pressure, like their kidney disease, like their, diabetes, all the rest of it. It presents differently. It has its own unique problems and symptoms, which is another whole philosophical discussion, because I don't think it can be reduced to the disease model. But it is the best thing we have right now. It's certainly better than people wandering around out there thinking, oh, the addict chose to suffer with this, to have this condition.
Yeah.
So
what type of medical medications do you deal with?
Well, this is super encouraging, and everybody is now in the process of getting on board with this. Mass General Brigham, Beth Israel Deaconess Lahey, Greater Lawrence Mental Health. I was working in a small southern New Hampshire Lamprey Healthcare, where they had a grant-funded program at all 3 locations. But of course, New Hampshire, got hit super hard going back, so they were, of course, responding to conditions. Boston Medical Center, everybody is now trying, in the process of getting this going. So when somebody goes to their primary care doctor and they give, the little depression quiz, and they can now give one about substance use disorder. Are you having problems with, have family members talk to you about your, have you missed work, that kind of thing. There's like a little formula. But they were afraid that, I don't know what to do if my patient answers yes. So now they're putting in place programs in a lot of the places, which, is another really positive step, because, now the help is there. And it's sort of the best practice approach of the American Society of Addiction Medicine. And there are medications that are prescribed for opioid use disorder, a couple of them, in fact, and another that is very effective for cravings with alcohol use disorder. So, and then the question comes up, you're just substituting one medication for another, or one drug for another drug. Well, the new drug, and yes, in the case of Suboxone or buprenorphine or methadone, you will be dependent on this. However, you're under a doctor's care. You're getting medication direct from a pharmacy, okay? Whereas anything on the street is adulterated with something.
Oh, absolutely.
The heroin stopped being heroin a long time ago. It's all synthetic variations of fentanyl. Now there's a new horrific drug called xylazine. I'm probably getting that wrong. That will not respond to Narcan.
I heard about that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So every time, they put in place, I think 5 or 8 years ago, an analog law, so they don't have to keep changing the drug enforcement laws every time drugs, morph a little bit.
Well, just to interrupt you a bit, I'm a believer in the medications as a tool. My concern is a lot of them that go in, be it methadone, Suboxone, they look at it as a quick fix.
Yeah. This is why the better programs are requiring or at least strongly encouraging a behavioral health component, counseling, also encouraging people to seek family therapy, to get involved in peer support. In other words, to do the other things as well as.
Well, when someone's prescribed one of these drugs, is it with the intention that it's going to be a maintenance program, they'll take it forever, or is it with the intention that they'll get weaned off? I mean, is there a plan?
That is still an individual matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that was always a conversation that I would initiate at a time when it was appropriate. I think the best practice and the theory is take cravings out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Let a person start to work on their life if they've blown it up, or learning, coping skills, or getting their psychosocial act together. It's really, the approach is referred to now as harm reduction,
mm-hmm.
which is a philosophy that says drug use is a reality. We can much better serve someone's needs, highest interest, first of all, if we keep them alive. That's why Narcan has to be out there. And if we start a connection with them, while they are still struggling, that rapport, is already built. And so, it can get better from there. But most of these programs are not a, 1-2 strikes and you're out kind of thing. Okay.
And
we look at,
I'm glad of that. Obviously,
we look at, okay, you're obviously struggling with, the best practices to do urine drug screens. And so, okay, you're obviously been using some cocaine. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Is that, first of all, do you know what's in your cocaine? And we go from there. And
well, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. Obviously, people that take those medications can get their buzz with a different drug that medication does.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how long can you, obviously you test them for that too, or how's that work?
Yeah. Okay. There has to be the medication in their system, first of all. So that's half the reason for the test. And I saw Cole put up, Suboxone was made to be a 5-day taper. Well, Suboxone is used to detox somebody, get them through the withdrawal initially, but then it can be used as maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of divides things into 2 camps: abstinence-based recovery and assisted recovery or substitution therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that medication for addiction treatment is certainly indicated in a significant proportion.
Well, I'll be honest. I used to be not totally against it, but you'd hear some horror stories. But I'm of the mind now that I believe that any of them can be used as a tool. As long as the therapy, the recovery, the working, it's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
You don't take methadone and you're all better.
And also, okay, so here's another issue. The addiction problem has many moving parts, and for many people, recovery is way outside the bounds of medically supervised.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not the whole story. And unfortunately, sometimes the legislators seem to think that.
Well, now you're talking my favorite subject.
This is the entire shooting match, and they just our U.S. rep, the thing she co-sponsored, I think finally got signed into law. It's going to go into effect in June. Along with that was something called an MAT Act. And a colleague of mine, a practitioner who works out of Michigan, where did I put his? Says, let's see. It is the first corrective step in the right direction to correct the mistakes of the 106th Congress initiated in the year 2000 by passing other legislation and waiver requirements. It's 22 years too late, he goes on to say. The state and federal regulations that are still there intended to curb access to opiates and pills and micromanage prescribers. They're always going for the prescribers. And it's, again, it's these are people who want to take care of people, and the system is making it so hard. There was just one other thing I wanted to mention, that my friend Arun Gupta, author of the Preventable Epidemic, great man. These regulations have forced doctors to abandon patient care and forced patients to seek. In other words, it's sort of gone contrary to what it was intended to do. I know these things are well-meaning, but when, I call the U.S. Rep's office every week for almost 2 years and couldn't get a response from somebody who made such a point of saying she was accessible, and said she would be the voice of the people who have no voice. Yeah. So there's that. I know we're kind of running out of time, Phil, so I do want to talk real quickly about when my book came out, I started an online support community.
Okay,
There's about 1,000 people. You've
Yeah.
seen it. You post, and thank you for contributing to that. About 1,000 people from 12 different countries, all different approaches to recovery, different types of addiction, all together cooperatively, and it's going on 5 years. It didn't happen randomly, because it can be the Wild West. So I had to do a little work, but it's really just something that's so positive, because it is also, again, that connection to people who may not be fully ready to walk into a church basement and say, "Hi, my name is Keith. I'm an alcoholic," or "I'm a opiate addict," or so, we need more of this kind of thing. And to remember that there is so much more that we share than what differentiates us in the recovery world, and to constantly be thinking of how we can do more to help the people who are still struggling.
And like what you just said, I can relate to that. Fran and I, the support group we do.
Exactly.
It's pretty tough to just say, just come to our meeting. Boy, it's very difficult for them to take that first step into there. They don't know what. That's why Fran and I, we always invite them over the house.
Yep.
And we do a little one-on-one, make them feel a little more comfortable. So the days of tough love, detachment, and all that stuff, I think we've come a long way from that.
I agree. And to think about the things we think about in harm reduction today, okay, looking at that 20 years ago, what? You're going to have addicts come into the doctor's office to receive medication? You're going to give them clean needles so they don't get hepatitis or AIDS? These things are unheard of.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that still feel that way.
Well,
so I would like to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And, like I said, I know your story is interesting, but I know what you do now is even more so. And again, like so many other people I've met in recovery, you have a passion for it. And that's like 90% of the whole deal. Knowledge to me is 10%. If you've got the passion to go along with it, and those are the people I like to deal with. So again, I thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
And all of you out there, I appreciate you tuning in. I enjoyed doing this show. And let's see, in 2 weeks, Cole will be back. And I'm sure she'll have something up her sleeve. Listen, those of you that know someone that are dealing with someone, reach out to either me or Cole. If it's a family member, we'll hook you up with the empty chair or the circle of hope or whatever. But don't try to do it on your own. It's just too damn hard. So that being said, we'll see you again on the empty chair. Bye-bye.